Assalamu alaikum. So today we are going to look into this beauty, Me and Rumi, the autobiography of Sham Tabrizi, translated, introduced and annotated by William C. Keitig. So in this book, the author tried to give us a perspective from Sham's side. Everybody knows that Shams was and is a very mysterious character in the pages of history, who is always explained from the perspective of Rumi, Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi, in his parables, in his poetic phrases. So everybody was keen to know who actually Shams Tabrizi was. So here in this piece of art, in this book, William tried to give us a perspective from Shams's side. So we'll get to know who Shams was in this book from the side of Shams himself. It would look like that how Shams would have narrated his perspective. Translator's introduction. Rumi has now become so famous in the West that it hardly seems necessary to introduce him, and anyone familiar with Rumi will have at least heard the name of his companion Shamsuddin of Tabriz. The relationship between the two is well known, that no less an authority than Houston Smith in his recent Why Religion Matters can cite Rumi's love for Shams along with Dante's love for Beatrice in the same sentence. The name of Shams comes up constantly in Rumi's poetry, and anecdotes about him abound in the later literature. The exact nature of their relationship, however, has puzzled almost everyone from the outset. How do we explain why a great and successful scholar, conventional in every respect, should suddenly throw away community approval, a very precious thing in traditional societies, and begin associating almost exclusively with someone who appeared to be one of the riffraff? What sort of person was Shams that he could have exercised such a profound effect on this outstanding cleric, poet and spiritual teacher? Practically all those who have written about Rumi, beginning with his son and his disciples, have attempted to explain what happened, what we have not heard in Shams's own version of the story. This book fills that gap. It was Rumi who gave Shams his mythic aura. Remember that Rumi's longest work is not his famous Masnavi, which is a spiritual epic in 6 books and 25,000 couplets, but rather his 40,000 verse collection of short love poems known as Shams Tabrizi, the collected poems of Shams Tabrizi. Despite the fact that this great hymnal to love bears Shams's name, no one has ever thought that he was its author. The collection was named after him because Rumi effaces himself in Shams's person and makes him the explicit and implicit object of devotion. Of course, the Shamsi is all about love for God, but in Rumi's retelling of love's trial and joys, Shams is not simply a human being, nor even a guide in the manner of the prophets. Rather, he is the actual living embodiment of true beloved, who is God himself. So some people think that Shams Tabrizi, that was mentioned in Rumi's writings every now and then, wherever you study it, people compare the persona, the personality to God. They think there was no person named Shams whom Rumi encountered in his life, but there was this idea which Rumi portrayed in the form of a person, that how much he gives that respect to that person, the love and the inspiration that Rumi seeks from that personality. So people think that maybe Shams wasn't a person but Rumi's idea of God, but some think that Shams Tabrizi was actually some human or some person. So that's why here the author has wrote, rather he is the actual living embodiment of the true beloved, who is God himself. The Diwan is also called after Shams because Rumi signs almost 1/3 of the 3,200 ghazals with his name, leaving most of the rest unsigned. A few were signed with other names such as those of his disciples Salahuddin and Husamuddin. In the Persian ghazal, the poet customarily refers to himself by a pen name in the last couplet. Most poets such as Saadi and Hafiz are known precisely by their pen names, not their personal names. A quick glance at the text of the Diwan must lead someone to think that Shams himself was the author, because his name occurs so often in the last lines. By far the best analysis in English of the role that Shams played in Rumi's life and poetry is provided by Franklin Lewis in a long chapter of his excellent study Rumi, Past and Present, East and West. There is no need for me to repeat the details of Lewis's account. His work can be consulted for historical, literary and religious background, and for information on both primary and secondary literature on Rumi and Shams. The purpose of this book is not to repeat what can easily be found in other sources, but rather to offer the words of Shams himself. Let me then turn to a brief review of the legend of Shams, then to a description of maqalat or discourses, the Persian text of Shams's sayings, which I am calling his autobiography. So these are the words said by William C. Katic in his Me and Rumi book. I must tell all of you that this book is so deep that when I was reading it, some of the things were so deep in philosophy that I wasn't able to understand at first glance or first read. So I am still reading and going through this book, even though I have it for 2 years almost. Still it's not complete, and I pick it up every now and then and try to understand what the author tried to say here, which actually Shams was saying. So what were these words that Shams said? So if anyone is a big fan of Rumi and Shams, his relationship, their interaction and their counter, like me, so you guys must have this book, which is called Me and Rumi, and it is an autobiography of Shams Tabrizi. It's a very beautiful book where the author has put very hard-working effort in extracting the perspective of Shams from Rumi and then portraying it as his autobiography. It's a very big thing for an author to do. A well-rehearsed, well-researched piece of art. Must go for it. Thank you so much. Jazakallah. Stay blessed. Stay under the mercy of Allah Almighty. May you all be blessed with shafaat of Aka Kareem sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. May you find your spiritual mentors soon, inshallah. Ameen. Jazakallah.